I just feel like he's acting as if anything he does as president, is not against the law. That just by nature of being the president, he is not subject to normal law. And we're about to find out because litigation is happening all over the place right now against many, many things that he's doing. And we will see if he upholds the law. If we will see if he listens to those court cases, if he adheres to them. But I think if we're not there already, we're fast barreling towards a constitutional crisis, right? Do equal branches of the government have to follow the Constitution? Amazingly, that is an open question in the United States of America right now.
James, our guest, is the new senator from the state of Michigan. Senator Slotkin, we've been talking about you behind your back, so I think it's better if we say it to your face, which is that we think you're a rising superstar in the United States Senate. You won an election where in a state that Kamala Harris lost. You did well. You know a lot of stuff. You've worked the CIA, the Defense Department, and boy, in those confirmation hearings, you've been tough. So if we can say it behind your back, we might as well say it to your face.
That's very nice. That's very nice. I appreciate that.
You warned that Defense Secretary Hegseth may be more loyal to Trump than the Constitution. Let's take it further. From what you have seen the past few weeks, do you think Donald Trump is committed to the Constitution or the rule of law?
I don't know if it's because of the Supreme Court ruling, in the last couple of years. I just feel like he's acting as if anything he does as president, is not against the law. That just by nature of being the president, he is not subject to normal law. And, we're about to find out because litigation is happening all over the place right now against many, many things that he's doing. And we will see if he upholds the law. If we will see if he listens to those court cases, if he adheres to them. But I think if we're not there already, we're fast barreling towards a constitutional crisis, right? Do equal branches of the government have to follow the Constitution? Amazingly, that is an open question in the United States of America right now.
Well, again, just to go through all the stuff that you know and talked about so well, they declared that birthright citizenship is ended. They unilaterally shut down USAID. They fired, 17 inspectors general without telling Congress about it, ignored a judge's order to prohibit freezing of appropriated funds, came into the Treasury payment system, which 5 former secretaries say is a huge risk and danger. I mean, this is a constitutional crisis, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, there's now, to me, again, there are court cases that are now pushing back on a lot of those things. Will he abide by the stays, the rulings that are coming out of those courts? And if not, then yes, we're in it. We're in it.
You have warned about Hegseth, Bobby Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard. On deck is the FBI nominee, Kash Patel. Mm-hmm. William Webster, Republican, former FBI director, said he would devastate the Bureau. The FBI would not be what it has been for years if they confirm Kash Patel. I can't believe I'm asking this as a serious question, but I mean it. Are there legitimate fears, if Patel is confirmed, that we're really going to have a police state?
Well, look, they're already firing people, civil servants at the Department of Justice, FBI officers who were involved in investigations they didn't like, whether they were assigned to those investigations willfully or not. They are getting rid of people who were quite literally just doing their job and upholding the law. Kash Patel has made very clear that he feels he can use that department to follow up on political, responses from the Trump administration against their adversaries, their enemies, people they don't like. And the FBI is the one body in the entire federal government that can actually take away the rights of another American citizen, right? They have arrest powers. They can prosecute. So I think that of all the nominations, I think that was one of the most catastrophic. And I just have to say, it has been kind of amazing for me as someone who's believes as much as possible that we should be working across the aisle, who won on the same ballot as Trump, watching my Republican colleagues roll over and just say, I know this is bad, privately have concerns, but then just vote in lockstep with the president. And it is a state of fear for elected Republicans right now. And they are aiding and abetting everything that is going on with their silence.
Boy, they sure are. You were a CIA agent in the Middle East, and you have said that Trump's proposal to take over to build beachfront condos in Gaza is ridiculous and absurd. You also are from a state where a lot of Arab Americans voted for Donald Trump. I guess it's sort of a twofold question. I mean, what do you hear? What are they telling you now? Do they realize maybe they were wrong? But secondly, why do you think Trump did this?
Well, I mean, look, I think it's hard to overstate how much pain and anger there was in many from our Arab American communities and Muslim American communities in Michigan. The number of people who have family members who were in the heat of that war in Gaza can't be overstated. And so that pain led them to, support someone that is now obviously showing his real colors. I mean, and the Gaza proposal, let's forget about it being illegal. Let's forget about trying to uproot 2 million people who were, many of them, already refugees from 1948. Let's forget about how unfeasible that is. I just want to put the marker down that this president is suggesting that U.S. forces be the occupying power in Gaza. I don't know a single American, Democrat or Republican, independent, who thinks that U.S. forces should go back into the Arab world, a conflict zone, after 20 years of war in Iraq and Afghanistan. As someone who served in Iraq, I can't tell you what a bad idea this is. My guess is Netanyahu suggested it. Netanyahu doesn't trust the UN. He doesn't trust all these other places. He trusts the US. And Trump, without thinking, said it. Now he's doubling down. And so we are watching this very closely in the Armed Services Committee on a bipartisan basis, because it just, I think, would be a disaster all around.
Boy, James Carville.
Oh, Senator, thank you so much. And I'll go to my favorite topic, which is politics. And I think you and I have a very similar view of identity politics. Yeah. Okay, so I think that the hangover from this hurt us in 2024, that we confronted voters and they still believe this. People famously, like Jon Stewart, said, oh, no, it wasn't a big deal because no one ran or everybody forgot about it. Do you think the shadow of identity politics had an adverse effect on Democrats running in 2024?
Yeah, I mean, I think a combination of things. One, I just think you don't have to believe me. Like, the data will show you that the idea that people vote in a certain way because of their racial or ethnic group is not right. It's changing, right? I mean, you look at what happened with Latinos, and where we lost voters, and I think that idea of treating people as a block because of their ethnic or racial background does not work. It's just, and the data's there. Okay, that's number one. But number two, I think we lost our sense of priorities. If you're for everything, then people don't understand what you really stand for. And I think in a place like Michigan, where people were so focused on their pocketbooks, right? They were so focused on the economy that, yes, we talked about the economy, but we also talked about 12 other things, and it got lost. And, to me, you have to be ruthless in how you prioritize, and it has to be aligned with what the majority, not Twitter, not online, but what the majority of people, of citizens, are worried about. And I think people so live in their echo chambers that there was a sense that, all these other issues, which are important, right? I'm a Democrat for a reason. They are important. They just weren't number 1, 2, or 3 for the majority, at least, of voters in Michigan. And we lost sight of that, and that's on us.
Right. And I think one of the really remarkably successful Democratic parties in the country is in Michigan, because we just don't have a lot of Democrats. We have a lot of women, a lot of female Democrats. I mean, an inordinate amount. And I think that's a testament to the good judgment of Democratic voters. I just want to make a disappointing observation. I think these people, the most racist thing that I hear is when people say communities of color, or people of color, because that assumes that everybody that is not white is the same, which is that, like, it's I think it's racist to say, well, Filipinos are the same as Hondurans, are the same as Nigerians, are the same as Indonesians, is absurd. And they just keep using this language, and I think they're too naive to know how stupid it is. That's my own view.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, the data will show you that it's just not accurate, right? I mean, you look at where some of our Muslim American communities voted, where some of our South Asian American families voted. I mean, it doesn't work, at least in a state like Michigan. It's like a giant mixing bowl on political preferences. And if you think that you understand a community because of their country of origin, you haven't run in a swing state. I'll tell you
Right.
that.
Well, okay, so I know you're not, if you are, please let us know, but I suspect that you're watching the events unfold in Michigan, particularly for Senator Peters' seat that's coming open. How many serious Democrats do you think are going to be vying for that? I'm really not at this point in your career, at this point in the cycle. I'm just looking for an analytical assessment of what's going on here.
Yeah, I mean, look, Senator Peters, I was smiling and happy for him through gritted teeth when he decided that he didn't want to run again.
Right.
He's been my mentor, and someone who's helped me learn the Senate in these first 35 days. The good thing is Michigan has a bench. I mean, since 2018 or really 2016, we have built a strong bench. There's a lot of people. That means good, healthy, old-fashioned American competition in primaries and for competitive seats. So I'm talking to everybody. I think I've talked to 8 or 9 serious folks at this point. Everyone's talking to each other. It's definitely, and we also for the first time in 110 years have an open governor seat and an open Senate seat. So it's like big churn. So we will get to a more whittled down list of people. But the good news is we have a bench, and you couldn't say that in the same way 10 years ago.
We do, man. We do. But am I right or wrong? I think the Senate nominating process is going to be a little more involved than the gubernatorial. I'm not saying that not different people not going to run for the nomination, but doesn't it feel like at a distance more Democrats will be contesting a Senate seat? Or is that not necessarily true?
I mean, right now we have a number of Democrats already in for the governor's race. We have our mayor of Detroit running as an independent, which is change the dynamics on the ground. And we will have, I'm sure, multiple people running for the Senate seat. So I think it's going to be competitive primaries in both big races.
So let me turn it right there. I just want to get a clarification. So the mayor of Detroit runs as an independent. Mm-hmm. He's on the general election ballot. So we have the so-and-so the Democrat, so-and-so the Republican, and the mayor of Detroit, the independent. How can that help? I mean, just from an observation, that's pretty troubling to me.
Well, look, I mean, the Mayor Duggan is someone who you can never count out. He's done amazing things in Detroit, but there's no doubt about it. It's like I said, it's throwing the math into interesting new places. So we're going to have to watch. We still have almost 2 years before the election, so many things can happen before that.
I often you and I, we agree that this could end in not a particularly helpful way. Albert, go ahead.
Senator, you're also on the Homeland Security Committee. Christy Nolan, the new secretary, suggested getting rid of FEMA. What do you think?
Well, considering that we had 6 tornadoes touch down in my state and have benefited to the tune of I think $100 million from FEMA in recent years, I have a lot of concern about their plans. I have a lot of concern about what they plan to turn it into, and you better believe that our committee is going to have a lot to say about that matter, that and many other matters. But obviously, in the wake of hurricanes, Florida, North Carolina, fires, places like Michigan, tornadoes, South Dakota, her own state, needed FEMA assistance after historic floods. So I'm deeply concerned about what that plan looks like, and we are eagerly awaiting something more than a talking point on that.
Back to your national security expertise, which is considerable. Ukraine. Defense Secretary Hegseth was over there this week, and he said really the Ukrainians, what they want is unrealistic. He was a welcome sign, I guess, to the Russians. Do you think we're in the process of selling out Ukraine?
Well, look, I think, the only people more concerned about American elections than American citizens were the Ukrainians, because they were such diametrically opposed views coming out of the two candidates on what to do about Ukraine. I think most Americans, I hope, can understand what would happen if someone invaded our country, what we would do to protect our country, and that the Ukrainians are just trying to defend their country against an autocratic leader and government. And I think that President Trump has made very clear that he was going to shut off aid at some point to the Ukrainians, military aid. And he has said incredibly sympathetic things to Vladimir Putin consistently. I mean, since he was a candidate, almost like in a fanboy type way towards Putin, glorifying who he is. So I have deep concerns, and I just forcing them to negotiate giving away a piece of their country for the Ukrainians when they aren't in a militarily strong position is just asking for Putin to do more in Europe, right? If you don't push back on him, don't be surprised when he comes to NATO countries. And don't be surprised when the Chinese, who are taking notes on everything that's happening right now in Ukraine, they say, well, look, American will is just not strong. So if we go into a neighbor, they won't really do anything. It'll be temporary, won't be a big deal. So I have deep concerns, not just about Ukraine and the poor Ukrainians, but what it means for Europe and what it means for overall sort of the threat to American, like not just American, just democracy.
And when you talk about the Chinese, you're talking about Taiwan.
Exactly. I mean, if you're the Chinese, you're saying to yourself, look, okay, they did a little bit more in Ukraine than maybe we thought they'd do, but a new president comes in and they just cut it off. And so this seems like an easier opportunity for us, and that we won't meet with real serious American interests. If we shut off freedom of navigation, those kinds of things around the world, like Americans aren't going to defend, freedom of navigation, no problem. It's just a problem. It sends the wrong signal.
Senator, let me steal from James's thunder and ask you one political question, then turn it back to him. How did you win in Michigan while Harris was losing? What was the difference?
Yeah. I think a combination, as I mentioned before, we were laser focused on the economy, people's pocketbooks, people's kids. We weren't talking about kind of 50 different issues. We were talking about the middle class as a national security issue. And the middle class is no one's looking to get rich. They're looking to have a good life, and their kids have a better life than them. So we were very focused on costs, on bringing costs down, and on the economy in general. And then I think, if I can be frank, just most of my outreach to people, let's say on TV or digital, was just me direct to camera being like, look, I'm running to be your next senator, and here's why. Just very simple. And I think that, people understood that I had a slightly different background than the average Democrat, that the national security work was different. And then I was just speaking directly to them. I mean, it wasn't a lot of big sweeping images of me on a stage. It was just like, I'm Alyssa Slotkin, I'm in my garage, and here's what I want to tell you I care about. So I think between the message and then the direct to camera approach, it helped us quite a bit with those Trump Slotkin voters.
James.
So, all right, well, I appreciate it so much, and I always point out to people that yourself, or Senator Baldwin, Senator Rosen, and my friend Senator Gallego, all won in states that we did not win the presidential vote, which is something that we should look at, and there are lessons to be learned there. And of course, you and I know what the lesson to be learned is. Focus on people's lives, not on what progressive interest groups say that matter to people. But we have this issue of tariffs, and this has got to be ground zero in Michigan, in the auto industry.
Yeah.
Tell us, what are you hearing from auto executives, and what are you hearing from the UAW? I suspect what's the cacophony, and what are you hearing out of the auto industry and unions representing the auto industry.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I don't think anyone has a problem with tariffs per se in general as a tool in the toolkit. Just use it precisely like a scalpel, not a sledgehammer, right? And the tariffs that were announced but then suspended, whatever it was, 2 or 3 weeks ago, combined with the new suggestion on aluminum and steel, those tariffs, particularly on Canada, disproportionately impact the state of Michigan, our auto industry. We're a big manufacturing state. Some of our parts go back and forth 4 times across the border just to get put in a car. But then our farmers, our number one market for our farmers is Canada. So you better believe the agricultural folks are popping a flare.
Right.
The auto industry, look, I think there are deep concerns about what it will do to a price of a car. Again, for the administration that ran on costs, just think about, based on the tariffs we saw, a car that would have cost you $20,000 is probably going to cost you $26,000. That means people buy less cars. That means our jobs start being at risk. Like, you can see the cascade here, right?
Right.
And so from the industry on down, I think that there are concerns. There are plenty, including in labor, who say, look, tariffs in general, like, we have to do something, China. And I hear that. Canada is different than China, right? For a million reasons. So the blunt stick approach is going to raise prices. And for some of my farmers, could put them straight up out of business.
Well, what are trying to think of Michigan agriculture? There's a lot of produce grown in Michigan,
Yes,
isn't there?
specialty crops.
Yes. The specialty. I mean, it's more of that than big cornfields or wheat fields you see in other Midwestern states.
We always, we used to say that we were the second most diverse agricultural state in the country after California. We do cherries and apples and asparagus and a whole bunch of potatoes, a bunch of things. We now say we are the number one most diverse agricultural state in the country with regular access to water. So we've changed the talking point. And so, we're not monocroppers like Kansas or Iowa. We don't do peanuts and rice down south. We don't do that. We have a diversity of small and medium-sized farms. And we're proud of that. But it means we just can't afford to be losing market share around places like Canada. It is unnecessary.
Probably, I got to tell you one Michigan story from '92. Second debate was in Lansing, and we did the debate prep right outside of Ann Arbor. And it was cold, and I didn't bring a sweatshirt, and I run every day. So I went in the sundry shop, and I bought an amazing blue sweatshirt. I didn't think about it. I was just being warm. And so that day we go to Lansing, there's a scrum of 2,000 people out front of the hotel. And I walked out of there with that amazing blue shirt on it. Like, I'll never vote for that son of a bitch for the rest of my life. I mean, the Michigan State intensity is really remarkable. And I got a feel of it. And Clinton said, God damn it, are you that stupid? What are you doing?
It's especially in Lansing, home of Michigan State University, feels particularly no offense, boneheaded to do. But I always explain to people that in Michigan, when we were growing up, 48, my dad was a lifelong Republican, my mom a lifelong Democrat. Used to be the most normal thing in the world growing up that families would have mixed political, views.
Sure.
We were much more likely to fight Michigan versus Michigan State than we were Democrat versus Republican in the state of Michigan. People can't stand that we fight about politics now, that Thanksgiving dinner is uncomfortable. So I hope for the day when politics is again kind of something we re-rib each other on, and it's just the Michigan State rivalry, or preferably Michigan-Ohio State rivalry that causes people to come to near violence. That's
but there's
my
no
goal.
argument in Michigan about Michigan-Ohio State, is there?
No argument. It's us versus Ohio.
Are we frozen?
And we feel it in a visceral way, in like every one of us in our DNA. Yes.
Well, if I were to ask you an unfair question, it would be, what was the most important day in November, the day you won the election or the day Michigan beat Ohio State?
I mean, I know the answer every Michigander besides my immediate family would say, the day we beat Ohio State. And they still haven't gotten over it. And they're like, coaching staff, I mean, they're literally traumatized by it. And you know what? I'm okay with that trauma.
Senator Slotkin, you have affirmed everything we said about you to start
Absolutely.
with. You are a fabulous guest. I hope you'll come back sometime. We'd like to keep talking to you.
Anytime. Thanks, guys. Appreciate
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.